Hi, Meadowlawn readers. Mrs. Hoffman here, and I'm going to be reading chapters 25 through 27. Chapter 25, A Vicious Circle. Miggery Sow called the man who purchased her uncle, as he said she must. And also, as he said she must, Mig tended Uncle's sheeps and cooked Uncle's food and scrubbed Uncle's kettle. She did all of this without a word of thanks or praise from the man himself. Another unfortunate fact of life with Uncle was that he very much liked giving Mig what he referred to as a good clout to the ear. In fairness to Uncle, it must be repeated that he did always inquire whether or not Mig was interested in receiving the clout. Their daily exchanges went something like this. Uncle: I thought I told you to clean the kettle. Mig: I cleaned it, Uncle. I cleaned it good. Uncle: Ah, it's filthy. You'll have to be punished, won't ye? Mig: Gore, Uncle, I cleaned the kettle. Uncle: Are ye saying that I'm a liar, girl? Mig: No, Uncle. Uncle: Do ye want a good clout to the ear, then? Mig: No, thank you, Uncle, I don't. Alas, Uncle seemed to be as entirely unconcerned with what Mig wanted as her mother and father had been. The discussed clout to the ear was always delivered, I am afraid, with a great deal of enthusiasm on Uncle's part, and received with absolutely no enthusiasm at all on the part of Mig. These clouts were alarmingly frequent, and Uncle was scrupulously fair in paying attention to both the right and left side of Miggery Sow. So it was that after a time, the young Mig's ears came to resemble not so much ears as pieces of cauliflower stuck to either side of her head. And they became about as useful to her as pieces of cauliflower. This is to say that all but ceased their functioning as ears. Words for Mig lost their sharp edges, and then they lost their edges altogether and became blurry, blankety things that she had a great deal of trouble making any sense out of at all. The less Mig heard, the less she understood. The less she understood, the more things she did wrong. And the more things she did wrong, the more clouts to the ear she received, and the less she heard. This is what is known as a vicious circle, and Miggery Sow was right in the center of it, which is not, reader, where anybody would want to be. But then, as you know, what Miggery Sow wanted had never been much of concern to anyone. Poor Mig. Chapter 26, Royalty. When Mig turned 7 years old, there was no cake, no celebration, no singing, no present, no acknowledgement of her birthday at all, other than Mig saying, Uncle, today I'm 7 years old. And Uncle saying in return, Did I ask ye how old you were today? Get out of my face before I give ye a good clout to the ear. A few hours after receiving her birthday clout to the ear, Mig was out in the field with Uncle Sheep when she saw something glittering and glowing on the horizon. She thought for a moment that it was the sun, but she turned and saw that the sun was in the west, where it should be, sinking to join the earth. This thing that shone so brightly was something else. Mig stood in the field and shaded her eyes with her left hand and watched the brilliant light draw closer and closer and closer until it revealed itself to be King Philip and his Queen Rosemary and their daughter, the young Princess P. The royal family was surrounded by knights in shining armor and horses in shining armor. And atop each member of the royal family's head, there was a golden crown, and they were all, the king and the queen and the princess, dressed in robes decorated with jewels and sequins that glittered and glowed and captured the light of the setting sun and reflected it back. Gore, breathed Mig. The Princess P was riding on a white horse that picked up its legs very high and set them down very daintily. The P saw Mig standing and staring, and she raised a hand to her. Hello, the Princess P called out merrily. Hello, and she waved her hand again. Mig did not wave back. Instead, she stood and watched. open-mouthed as the perfect, beautiful family passed her by. Here's a picture of her standing there watching. Let me get to my other. Sorry about that. Papa, called the princess to the king, what is wrong with the girl? She will not wave to me. Never mind, said the king. It is of no consequence, my dear. But I am a princess, and I wave to her. She should wave back. Meg, for her part, continued to stare. Looking at the royal family had awakened some deep and slumbering need in her. It was as if a small candle had been lit in her interior, sparked to life by the brilliance of the king and the queen and the princess. For the first time in her life, reader, Meg hoped. And hope is like love, a ridiculous, wonderful, powerful thing. Meg tried to name this strange emotion, and she put a hand up to touch one of her aching ears, and she realized that the feeling she was experiencing, the hope blooming inside of her, felt exactly the opposite of a good clout to the ear. She smiled, and she took her hand away from her ear. She waved to the princess. Today is my birthday, Meg called out. But the king and the queen and the princess were by now way too far to hear her. Today, shouted Meg, I'm 7 years old. Aw. Chapter 27, A Wish. That night, in the small, dark hut that she shared with Uncle and the sheep, Meg tried to speak of what she had seen. Uncle, she said. I saw human stars today. How's that? I saw them all glittering and glowing, and there was a little princess wearing her own crown and riding on a little white tippy-toed horse. What are ye going on about? Said Uncle. I saw a king and a queen and an itty-bitty princess, shouted Meg. So? Shouted Uncle back. I would like, said Meg shyly, I wish to be one of them princesses. Ha! Laughed Uncle. Har! An ugly, dumb thing like you? You ain't even worth the enormous lot I paid for you. Don't I wish every night that I had back that good hen and that red tablecloth in place of you? He did not wait for Meg to guess the answer to this question. I do, he said. I wish it every night. That tablecloth was the color of blood. That hen could lay eggs like nobody's business. I want to be a princess, said Meg. I want to wear a crown. A crown, Uncle laughed. She wants to wear a crown, and he laughed harder. He took the empty kettle and put it atop his head. Look at me, I'm a king, see my crown? I'm a king, just like I always wanted to be. I'm a king because I want to be one. He danced around the hut with the kettle on his head. He laughed until he cried. And then he stopped dancing and took the kettle from his head and looked at Meg and said, Do ye want a good clout to the ear for such nonsense? No, thank you, Uncle, said Meg, but she got one anyway. Look here, said Uncle after the clout had been delivered. We will hear no more talk of princesses. Besides, who ever asked you what you wanted in this world, girl? The answer to that question, reader, as you well know, was absolutely no one. Well, I hope you enjoyed those 3 chapters. I feel bad for Meg. Keep reading, and I'll see you soon. Have a good day.